Good day, students, and welcome to Unit 4, our second component, which is all about job work analysis. So when I say component 2, that's because I'm relating to our pay model framework, which is what Unit 4 is about, and I'm going to get into component 2, which is all about how do we actually assess work, and the main topic that we're going to look at, which is all how we assess work, it's job analysis. So as you'll remember, this is the pay model that we're working through, and we are going to look at alignment today, and in particular how job analysis as a tool helps us to actually get alignment. So what actually is job analysis? Now, I would imagine all of you have come across this topic before, as it is without a doubt the cornerstone of all HR functions. But of course, we're going to look at it from a compensation point of view. So what is job analysis, and what does it have to do with compensation and how it's managed? So most of you, when you think of job analysis, immediately going to say, well, that's how we get job descriptions that are updated, and that is absolutely correct. But as it relates to compensation, let's look at this. If pay is to be based on work performed, some way is needed to systematically discover, analyze, and describe the differences and similarities amongst these jobs, so that jobs with more responsibilities or more skills get paid higher, or jobs that are contributing directly to the mission statement or the strategic goals should be paid higher, just like some jobs which may not hold so much responsibilities or which may not be directly related to mission and strategic goals may be paid less. So we're not looking at what is the justification right now, but job analysis is simply the way of trying to discover the differences and similarities between jobs so that we can make sure that our compensation is fair. So this is the simplest definition. As we know, job analysis is the systematic, that's a big deal, process of collecting information that identifies similarities and differences in the work. So once again, if we look at this from a compensation standpoint, jobs that are similar probably should be paid around the same. Compared with if jobs are very different, then that may well be a reason why there's a difference in compensation. But it's certainly a systematic process of collecting information to design or develop or re-engineer or recreate or polish or whatever we want to say a job. Jobs change and strategic directions change, therefore jobs change. So job analysis is actually something that we should be doing all the time. So why perform job analysis? So job analysis, or JA, will provide both managers and employees with, and this is clear here, a work-related rationale for pay differences. So job analysis has two critical uses. First, it's going to look at, as we said, the similarities and differences in the work, and then that will help us establish an internally fair and aligned job structure. As I said before, job analysis is seen as the cornerstone of all HR functions. And for those of you who did HRM, this is a slide you probably would have come across, but just shows how important job analysis is for all functions. So once we are clear as to what are the KSAs, the knowledge, skills, and abilities required for the job, that makes recruitment and selection a lot easier. Once we know what the job is all about, that certainly makes selection easier. Once we are clear as to what the job is in terms of these are the standards required to perform this job, or these are simply the performance standards of the job, then performance appraisal becomes simple. Job descriptions help us realize where the training needs are, because if there's a TDR or task, duty, or responsibility that someone can't do, then we need to train them. And then of course, which is where we are here, job analysis will provide a basis for determining the different rates of pay. So let's think of it. We are trying to build what we would call a structure, a compensation structure, and we can either do that based on the job itself or the person doing the job. So today we're going to follow on with the job itself, hence the reason we're looking at job analysis. But later on, we're going to look at how do we create a structure based on the person that we have in place. Now, we're not talking about the actual person, whether it's John or Sally, but rather the KSAs, the skills, the knowledge, the abilities, the competencies that they bring to the job. So one looks at actually what is the job, the task, duties, and responsibilities, and we define or design and build a structure through understanding the jobs. The other actually looks at the skills and competencies. And we will certainly see that the two are very linked, because obviously the KSAs are based on the TDRs. But we're going to split it in two just so that we can better understand how to build structures. I don't think there's anybody who would do one or the other, but we'll just go through them separately. So job-based structures look at, just as I said, at the TDRs, so the tasks, duties, and responsibilities that the people are doing and what they expect to get. This is the simplest way of creating a structure, is to actually look at the jobs that people do. Right, so what are we going to try and do here? So the first thing is we do a job analysis. That's when we get all our information in to determine what is this job actually about. We write the job description. Then, because it's compensation, we're going to actually do a job evaluation, which is basically trying to find out the value of each job as they relate to each other. We're going to try and assess the value, look at the degrees and the weightings of different tasks, duties, and responsibilities, and then create a structure based on that. So again, many of you might be familiar with the term job evaluation. Let's be clear that job analysis and job evaluation are two different things. Job analysis is how we're actually collecting information so that we can come up with our end product of a job description and a person specification. The job evaluation is how we determine the value of jobs. You cannot do a job evaluation unless your job descriptions are in order. So it has to be that we do job analysis first, get very sound, up-to-date job descriptions, and now we can evaluate or work out what's the value of jobs based on what we call compensable factors, which we'll talk about in a little while. Right, so this is it. This is just as I said. In order to get this internal job structure, which we want to be really fair and well aligned, we start off with job analysis, we create job descriptions, we then do job evaluation, and that helps us determine the structure of our jobs in terms of which jobs should be paid more, which jobs should be paid less, etc. So let's just quickly go through job analysis. Why are we doing it? What information is needed? How do we collect information? Who should be involved? How useful are the results? Those are the major areas of job analysis. So as it relates to compensation, the main reason we're doing job analysis is to have the most accurate job description possible so that we can do a really accurate, fair job evaluation, which we'll talk about a little later. Okay, so the key here is if our job descriptions are not up to date, if they include functions that we no longer do, if there are functions that we do that are not included, if there's changes in strategic goals and job descriptions haven't changed to suit, then our job descriptions are not up to date. So hence the reason for proper job analysis. So what do? First, we decide what jobs we're going to look at, because you cannot do job analysis for an entire company all at once. I guess you could if you had a lot of extra support, but if you're going to put all your HR duties on hold, perhaps you could do it as well. But what we tend to do is start off with a department or a functional area and then work from there. We then look at the different types of information we want to collect. We then identify where we're going to get that information or that data. And in this case, we can actually look at the people doing the jobs themselves or their managers and supervisors, or maybe anybody that they interact with. Then we look at the different ways that we actually collect that data. And then we verify that data, evaluate it, and then actually write our job analysis report, which is where we get our JDs, our job descriptions. Right, so this is just typical information that we would look for with regards to the different data that we want to collect in order to write the best possible job description. So obviously the title of the job, the department, the number of people who hold a job is a big deal, because sometimes we might have 3 people doing a job that 2 people could do, or sometimes we have 3 people doing a job that 4 should really be doing. So that's an interesting, dilemma there of looking at the actual volume of work, not just the task, but the volume of work that we're trying to get through. In job content, we're obviously looking at the tasks, the activities, what constraints you may face, the criteria for performance. the critical incidents, the working conditions, the roles you play, anything to better help us understand the job itself. Then we're going to look at the employee and what skills are required, what knowledge they need to have for the job. We're also going to look at the relationships that they have internally with other people who they may serve as an internal customer, who they may be on the receiving end of internal customer service, or who gives them information to get their job done, etc. And then, of course, all their external relationships as well. So again, this is just examples of data we need to look at to do a really good job analysis. So the heart of job analysis is collecting and analyzing the actual job content. So this will involve the elemental tasks or units of work with an emphasis on the purpose and objective of each task. So in a job analysis, we don't necessarily have to get into these are the exact steps you have to take when you're doing a function, but more try to understand what is the objective and the purpose of each function or each task, and then work out what's the best way of doing it. But when we get very microscopic and start to list out every single thing that has to be done, sometimes we lose the point on the purpose of what we're trying to achieve, and then we don't allow a kind of leeway for people to do it better. So really, when we're looking at what work is required, we're trying to find out what is the purpose and the objective of each task to make sure that that is still in alignment with what we're trying to achieve strategically. It's still what we want this position to actually do. Right, so that's just where we are in terms of what other information we're looking at when we do job analysis. So once we've collected all the data on all the tasks and the outcomes, we can now look at the behaviors that we expect people to demonstrate that will result in the outcomes. So we have duties and tasks and responsibilities as well as behaviors. Now, there are many different ways of actually doing the job analysis. We talked about the different ways you can collect information, but in terms of job analysis, there are 3 different ways we're going to look at. The first is PAQ, Position Analysis Questionnaire. A lot of this is done online now, but this is basically a questionnaire. So it sort of works as a framework to help us actually determine the degree to which different tasks are involved in a job. So it's a questionnaire that has 194 different tasks. Within each of those tasks, there's a 5-point scale, and that's helping us actually kind of determine what tasks are involved in a particular job. So here's a little more specifics here. So these are 7 factors or 7 areas, and for each job, they'll look to see where you are from 1 to 5. So in terms of how much input are you putting into, how much information input is regarded in this job, what mental processes, the output, your relationship with other peers. For example, do you liaise with people? Do you actually supervise people? Do you mentor people? Or are you just reporting to someone? So it just looks at these very generic factors here and tries to use them as a framework to help us better understand the different levels involved in each of the tasks of a job. Right, so the similarities and differences among jobs are described in terms of those factors rather than in terms of specific aspects. So let's just say I'm looking at an admin assistant in marketing and I'm looking at a legal clerk. They are very different jobs, but there may be similarities when it comes to doing things such as mental processes or work output. So as I said, it gives me a framework of how I can look at very different positions, but yet in different degrees within these 7 factors. Okay. The other one that a lot of people are familiar with is very similar to FJA, Functional Job Analysis, very much a quantitative approach to job analysis. Again, there is a list provided or an inventory of various functions. In this case, they look at 3 broad areas: data, people, and things. Hopefully I have a little bit more. I don't have much more on that. Right. So in terms of, do you analyze data? Do you collect data? Do you collate data? In terms of people, do you supervise? Do you lead large teams? And in terms of things, what things do you do for your job? So again, it's just a framework to help us better kind of structure the different positions and how each of them fit into these 3 areas without trying to look at task by task by task. The third one does just that though. It actually looks at the tasks. So it's called Task Inventory Analysis, and it really tries to break down the smallest unit, which is a task, a specific statement of what people do. So this is really getting into what does every person actually do and then trying to analyze it versus other positions. There's a lot more work without a framework like PAQ or F, functional job analysis. Critical incident method is also another one. We basically try to come up with the 5 to 10 critical tasks of each job, and then we use those to basically build up our job description. Okay, so I'll stop there for now, and basically what we've done just very quickly is go through different types